Hi everyone, it's Nono here, and this is a quick hands-on tutorial on how to create sortable list and grid dynamic view components. So we have a component here that is going to sort our content depending on these properties that we have here. That also can be toggled between list and grid views. This is all made with Vue, CSS and HTML5. This means that you have a list like this one, for example. You want to be able to sort the data according to parameters or like properties of your data. And you also want to be able to flip between different views. In this example, we're going to see how to flip between list and grid and how to sort maybe by age or by date or by name. All right, let's dive in. I already have this application as a starting point. This is a Laravel app that simply has like a blade view. This is a PHP, well, it's actually an HTML view that has a CSS flex grid. And this grid, you don't really need to know anything about Laravel to follow this tutorial, even though it's good if you do. But everything you need to know is that we have these classes here. And if I add the list class, this turns into a list. I'm going to remove this scaling thing that I have here on the code that is not really helping anyone understand this. So if I leave the list here and show you this way, if I now remove this list class from here, this turns into like a 3 elements by row list. So we're going to leave this here on the side. What we're going to use is 2 different things. So we're going to use Vue, which you can access at v-cloak. This is a progressive JavaScript framework comparable to React if you know it, but a bit different. And we're also going to use Lodash for their sort by algorithms. The first thing I'm going to do is that I'm going to go to look for Vue and Lodash, and we're going to try to get their CDN URL so we can load them in our website directly. So CDN Vue, CDN.js. So we go to CDN.js, we can get this library here and we can put it on the header of our application. We can click on here to copy the tag, and now we can paste it on our website. So we're going to go to Vue.js.org. We're going to go to get started, and we're going to grab this CDN version to put on our website. So I'm going to paste this here, and I'm going to go to CDN, look for Lodash there, and I'm going to click here to copy the HTML tag, and I'm going to put it here. All right, so now we should, if this works, we should be able to go to our site, reload, go to the console, and now we can print Vue, which is a function, so it works. And we have many of the things that we can do here, and load as a function, and that works. So if we actually were to comment this out, this wouldn't get loaded, and we wouldn't be able to print either of them. So now that we have this working, so we're going to uncomment this and load Vue. The first thing we're going to do is, instead of manually generating so many of these container items, we're going to try to use Vue to do that. We're going to try to have Vue have some data in JavaScript as a JSON object, and we're going to try to make it populate our list. So right now we're going to fall back into our container list. So we have tabs in here, so they will be like all vertically aligned, and we want to make this a Vue component. So the first thing you have to do to make a Vue component is, after your HTML is defined and Lodash and Vue are loaded, so this is going to be like this. So we're going to say let app new Vue, and then we have our app. Right? So this is our application. Nothing is going to happen. Maybe what I can do is remove the flex grids from the top, because this is not flex grid anymore. And so this is actually a different tutorial, and we can put that there, and we can put a bit less padding to the website. So 1 rem. Now that we still have just one component and that we have a Vue application. So with Vue, what we need to do is first have a way to reference the container where our application is based in. So what we're going to do is we're going to leave our classes here, but we're going to add a new class that is going to be called app. And we're going to tell Vue that this is going to be our selector to get that component. So when we do that, when we do this here, now we should have an app, like an app variable, our application. Now our component is mounted as a Vue component. There is one thing that Vue lets you do, that is hiding your application while it's loading, because maybe sometimes it needs to do some processing. So what we can do here is that we can set that for this tag that we put there on the description, for every single child, we're going to have the display to be none. So this is not going to be shown. Okay, so if we remove and hide this thing, this is hidden. min, right? We could say something more subtle like opacity equals 0.5, right? So you'll see what happens. This has this v-cloak property until Vue mounts your application. So we could, for example, run this code on our console. So I could go to my console here and run this code. Vue is not defined. Let me see. 1 second. Okay. So when I mount this, so if I click, this actually has the v-cloak property removed from the HTML, and that shows. So one thing that we could do is that we could actually set a timeout and put a function here, and maybe after 1 minute we do this instantiation of our application. We say that our app equals new Vue. So now we load, and it takes 1 second until our application is mounted. And this is good practice just because this allows you to do something pretty cool. For v-cloak, what we're going to do is that before that item, I'm going to add content, and it's going to say loading, and I'm going to put the opacity of that component is going to be 0.6. And check this out, right? Now, for that second that is loading, you can see this here, and we can actually hide the other part of the code. So now we have a loading mechanism for our grid, and this allows us to, when Vue actually takes time, maybe fetching information or doing something, or you have to do whatever before mounting, it's good to have this v-cloak property and some sort of loading sense to the user. What happens here is that we are locally doing this, and we are setting a manual timeout. If I comment that, you can see that we're not going to see any loading because Vue loads instantaneously and we don't really have any delay. But if you had 250 milliseconds of delay, you would see something like this. And now what we need to do is that we can define here other properties. So we can say we have some data for our application, we have some computed properties, and we're going to have some methods. These are JavaScript functions. So for our data, so I'm going to imagine that I'm setting here a set of sketches, like a drawings or maybe posts on my blog. So I have my sketches property, which is going to be an array. I could say, okay, my first sketch has an ID of 1 or 0, and the name is, I don't know, let's say 1 word per day or something. And then I'm going to make a few more. So we're going to change the titles here. So we're going to put that there. And what I'm going to do is that I'm just going to go to the archive, and I'm just going to copy a few titles. So for example, would be like, we need new interfaces, and journals, energy, and time. And the last one is going to be free diving, first impressions. So these are going to be my titles. We don't really have any content so far, and nothing really shows up in here. So you see how this container is being added here manually. So I could add more of them. So now we have 3 here. What we're trying to do is not to have to manually put every item here, but generate them in base of the data that our Vue application has, right? For that, we're going to put here a div. We're going to say v4, and this is a Vue helper, v4 sketch in sketches, right? So this is the sketches data property. And we're going to put here that the key is going to be the sketch.id, which we have defined before. We're going to create a new div, and the only thing we're going to put here is the sketch.name property, right? Now we have a set of names one after the other. We just have divs with the names. And what we want to do now is to have divs like this ones. So the only thing we need to do for that is to just add what we have there, right? So we just need the class and all of the other properties of this component, and we can put them inside of this block. So we just do that. So it's just going to generate one of those default cards per item. And the only thing we need to do is just put the name on the title field, and boom, then we go and we have that there. So we can maybe reduce the margin bottom now that we have seen a bit of the content here. And this would be our cards. All right, we have our cards, and we have some body text, which is really non-existent. So it would be maybe cool to have some more content to show there. And I'm just going to go ahead and change the layout here. So maybe we can do this and then put the color here to be cool. All right, so we have these things. Maybe we can make this some other color, so it's not this boring. Now maybe we can display their IDs, right? So we can say I have an ID for each of these things here. So I have from 0 to 4, and we can actually render those. We can now go and remove these things, and I could say body text of item, and then we put here sketch.id ID, right? This is the only information or extra information that we could use of this item because it's the only other thing that we have. And I don't know, maybe it makes sense to add it somewhere else, like maybe to put it here. Yeah, that's a bit ugly. Anyhow, let's just keep this maybe as something that we don't see a lot. So maybe we make here a span, or we just maybe, I don't like this, but let's just do it to be quicker. So you see the numbers in there more or less. And the thing that we're going to do now is that we're going to try to sort these items by name and by their ID. So those are two different things. One thing is alphabetical and the other one is just by numbers. And we're going to create here a div that is going to be called container header, and it's also going to contain items. So one is going to be ID and the other one is going to be name. We're just going to see that here, ID and name, and we have to create a class. So this is going to be the container header is going to be a display flex as well as we did before. So we got those there, and now the container header item is going to be maybe have some padding, so maybe 0.3 rem, and we just need to apply that class here. So class container header item. So now we have these things here. We want to make sure that I'm going to show you what we're doing. So if I put some background color here, let's say Gainsborough, I don't know. So if we put here maybe border radius to be 2 pixels and maybe margin right 0.3 rem, we really don't want these things to be affected when we put the sorting arrow there, because what I'm going to do is that we're going to have the sorting arrows when these properties are ordering there. But for now, the only thing I'm going to do is I'm going to just put 1 and we just have that. And then the cursor is going to be a pointer. And now I'm going to remove actually the delay when loading our application, because otherwise this is a bit annoying when it updates. Nothing happens when I click, so we need to put into a header. Just going to bring this to center our container header. What I want now is to click here and actually sort the list by the IDs that we have there. So let's bring this back here. And yeah, and for that we only need a few steps. One is going to be creating a computer property. Right now we're using here the sketch in sketches, right? So we have a set of sketches and they're in the order defined here. So I could change them and they would change. And that might actually happen and be something good that we could do. So we have them out of order and we don't want to sort them manually. So what we do for that is to have a computer property that we're going to call sort the sketches. Is going to be a function that is going to return something. And for that, we could simply return the sketches and now use here instead of sketches, use sorted sketches. So you can see now that this is still there, and if I remove one, it's still using that one. But now what we need to do is to actually sort here. To sort, what we can do is use this Lodash sort my sketches, maybe so you see better. And now we put here a property, we say maybe the ID, and we can say ascending. So now when we do this, what happens is that magically these items are being sorted with the right order, right? So you see the number 0, the 1, the 2, the 3, and the 4. And we could just put here desk and they would descending. Okay, is order by. All right, yeah, so it's order by, not sort by. So this is ascending and this is descending, which is from more to less. We could use the name. So now if we do ascending, we see that is A, B, C, D, E, F, G, O, and W, right? And that goes in order. So what we want to do is parameterize this. So we want to say, okay, the sort by property is going to be, here is ID, and the order by property is ascending, let's say. So now we can call here, we copy these two, and what we do is this, and then put this here. Sort by and order by. And now we have an error, data, sort, ID, this order by, some error is happening. We're not closing here. Cool. Okay, so now with our properties, we can say descending, and now we do need to make the numbers bigger so you can see them and it's a bit more evident. One thing we can do is here add a filter scale transform. Yeah, not working. So we just leave it like it was. Cool. Now what I want to do is that when I click, I change the sorting, right? So for example, we say, okay, this is ascending, but now I want to click. So now we are going to have a function that's going to be called sort, or maybe toggle sort. So we're going to toggle the sorting. So we're going to maybe have a function that's going to be called sort, and this is our sort by. And what we're going to do is, let's make it simpler. So we just want to sort. And what we do is that we get that if this order by, the first item is ASC, what we do is that this order by equals desk. And this will be ASC if not. So now we just have to call this method. And what we do for that is that we put on the ID element, we just put here at click, we call the method sort, right? So at click sort. And now this happens, right? So I can click here and supposedly that method is being called, and this order by function. So let's look here, clicked. So this is working. The only thing we need to do is put here this force update. Let's log clicked. Something's a bit off here. Okay, this is actually out of our Vue application, so it wouldn't work even if we had it. So we can put this here, and maybe we actually don't need the things that we added. So now when I click this, so these items, you can see them here. So these items are being sorted, but this arrow is not doing anything. So now we need to change that arrow according to the sorting mechanism. And what we do for that is that we can get here and say my sort arrow is going to be a function and it's going to depend on this. So we say if the order by is ASC, we return, and we do otherwise, we return down, right? So if it's ASC, up, otherwise it's descending, down. So this is ascending and this is descending. So nothing really happens now, but what we do now is first put the user select none, and second is that we're going to go to our item, and in here, so instead of forcing this to be up, what we want to do is, so we just put here, let's do put the ID content, and what we're going to do is a span that we with Vue force the content to be the sort arrow, and that's a function there. All right, so now you can see this is descending and ascending, right? So this is now working, and we have by one property. So what I want to do is allow for us to sort by different properties. You might be willing to sort by ID, but also by name. And how do we know that is working? So let me see. We have this div here, and I think I can create one more. Yeah, okay. So let's say I have my name, and this is not working yet. So we need to sort and tell the application what we want to sort by. So we say here, for example, is ID, and here is by name, right? So that's the first thing that we want to do. And also we need to update the sort arrow. How do we do that? Here we need to have a parameter, the property, right? Or like the sort by. And here we also want to pass the sort by. So let's do one thing. I'm going to change this to put it the opposite way, because what happens now is if I click, if it's like this and I click name, I want the sorting by name to be ascending, because we were sorting by other property before, and we probably don't even want to see this arrow. So what I'm going to do is that if you're not ascending, you go to ascending. But if you're not ascending, or this sort by doesn't equal the new one, what we're going to do is that we set the sort by sort by, and we always set to ascending, right? So for example, so you're going to see now, if I do ID and name and then ID, right? This is ascending. And if I click here, this is already ascending by name. What we're going to do is that if the sort arrow is not, let's put this here, if the sort by is not the one on the tag, we're not even going to show the arrow. So if this sort by doesn't equal sort by, we're simply going to return empty. And then we're going to else if we're going to return something. All right. So this here. So if we have, let's see how cool. So now what happens is if I have this ID, right? So the ID is 43210 01234. And now if I click name, I have, this is alphabetical order, and now this is descending order, right? So we have a component here that is going to sort our content depending on these properties that we have here. And now that we've done this, it's super easy to extend our program to sort by other types of properties. So for example, we could go here and say maybe text, and then this is somebody text. And now we can put this in here, sketch text, and that's somebody text. And to make it easier, maybe, I don't know, like 1,000 words. And now here you say 200 words a day, and then my journals, 12 letters or something, and then creative interfaces. And now here we just put like what we learned. It's okay, whatever. So now we have different text on each of these, in each of these cards. And how could we add a new sorting mechanism? Now we don't even need to touch anything on Vue. We just go here, we just change the property here, so description, and we just change these two variables and go back to our program. And now you see this is going upwards and down, and it's working. Okay, so I'm putting here description, but it's actually the property name text. So that's why it wasn't working. So now text and text. And one thing that is weird is that it sorts by the first character, not by the numbers. So 1, 0 is first, 1, 2 is second, and then 2, 0 is third. It's not really by the numbers. If we wanted to actually have it properly, so let's say that this one has, this might be, I don't know, 0, 0, 0, 9, and this could be like 9, 9, 9, 9, whatever. So this would have to be like this, and this, so padded zeros. So now what we can do is, if we do this, right, 0, 0, 0, 9, 12, 200, 1000, 999, and then this goes the other way. So text, ID, name, and text. This is a way in which you can create a dynamic component to sort your elements. There's just one little thing. We can have modes, or like you could call them however, but I like to just put, right, 0. And we can say 0 for list, 1 for grid, for instance. And what we can do is that we can bind classes to our Vue components, right? Or like HTML components according to data in our Vue model. And one way to do that is like this. So you say bind class, and we can say, I'm going to bind the list class if 1 equals 1, for instance. So let's say we do that. So you see, this is the list view. And if I do, if 1 equals 0, then I don't do that anymore. So we're actually having this grid that I've realized doesn't work anymore for some reason, because we have now this other list inside of the container, right? And maybe to solve that, we could just add another div on the top here. I don't know, we're not going to fix it now, but yeah, so this is the grid view, right? We can still sort and do stuff. And if we make this clause here again true, this is our list view. This was grid and list. So now we just need to make this something different. So list is going to be here if mode equals 0, which is happening. If mode was 1, it would be the grid. If mode is 0, that is right now, and if I put mode 1, we go to the grid. The only thing, we need a method here that is like toggle mode and something to call the mode. So what we're going to do now is copy one of these header items. So we're going to put it at the end. We just put another header item, and this is going to toggle the mode instead of doing the sorting. And we don't really need this here. We're gonna maybe do mode equals 0. We do that the content is going to be list, otherwise it's going to be grid, and I don't know if this is going to work. All right, so that seems like it works, and that's working. And if we toggle, we go to the grid. So now we do have like a toggling component. So we go from the grid to the list. So I'm going to make this a bit bigger so you can see it. So we from list to grid, and we can sort by IDs descending or by text descending, for example, and then go to the list, and that the sorting is maintained. So here we have a sortable component that also can be toggled between list and grid views. This is all made with Vue, CSS, and HTML5. That's all you need. And if we were to add more items, I can just put a lot more things here, and we can have a grid with more components and stuff. And this works pretty well. All right. And with all of that, I think that was it. I hope that that gave you a good overview on how you can create a sortable dynamic grid that can change between different arrangements or different layouts in Vue, HTML5, and CSS. Thanks a lot for watching. It was Nono Martinez Alonso here. Do check out the other playlists that go over how to build things with JavaScript and Laravel and web development on my channel. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you next time. I hope you learned something today. Bye.